Hello! Today I'm going to be talking about the most disappointing books I read in 2023. I know that everyone else posted like these wrap-up type videos in December, but for me, like, I wanted to wait until I had read every book I was going to in 2023, so hence January is the wrap-up month for me this year. Without any further ado, let's just get into it. The first most disappointing book I read in 2023 is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This book follows our main character Zachary, who, when he was younger, a mysterious door appeared to him in an alleyway. He did not enter the door, but then years later, when he was in grad school, he came across this book that told the story of him finding the door and not entering it. From there, this spirals out of control. The book feels like a fever dream. You come across secret societies, you come across other people who have stories in the book. It's a big thing. Honestly, I was so excited for this book because I loved The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. That's her name, right? As an aside, like, I don't know if I would like The Night Circus as much now as I did when I read it originally, so maybe, like, that's part of the reason this book just didn't quite hit for me. But what I remember from The Night Circus was, like, her beautiful writing, this beautiful romance. The romance in here, like, it didn't really make sense to me. It just felt like it was kind of shoved in there. I didn't really feel any build-up. Again, it felt like a fever dream. It was odd, but not in the way that I like things to be odd, so this one was disappointing. Next we have perhaps, honestly this one might be my greatest disappointment of 2023, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. This book follows our two main characters, Yumi and Painter, who both come from different worlds. Yumi, in her world, is this sacred figure that travels from town to town, making sure that the spirits are helping the people. Painter, however, comes from a world where nightmares come to life, and the only way to stop them is by painting them and changing them to something else. But then both their worlds get turned upside down when their worlds become inextricably linked. I don't know, I'm holding this so close to my face. This is another book where the romance just did not do it for me. I felt like there was no build-up. I felt like it was just shoved in there, same as with the other book. I also just hated the humor in this book. I didn't really feel like it fit the book very well. Like, I felt like it was a more serious story, but then Brandon Sanderson was just cracking jokes every page, and I don't think it worked at all. This one was so disappointing for me because it's Brandon Sanderson, and it was the year of the Sanderson, and I was so hyped for these books, but ultimately it was a disappointment. Next book that makes this list is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This book is kind of like a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, loosely, very loosely. It follows our main character, whose name I cannot remember because I do not have the book with me. But essentially, she comes from a family of moneylenders, but her dad is really bad at his job and never asks for the money back. So her family is very poor and they suffer a lot. So she takes over the family business and she starts making it very profitable. Everyone hates her, but she's making a lot of money. And then in comes this, like, ice king, this mythical creature who captures her and takes her to his realm in exchange for her creating gold for him. This book, try as I might, I just could not get into it. I had really high expectations because I liked Naomi Novik's other book, Uprooted. It took me a second to remember that. I remember loving that book, so I wanted to read Spinning Silver as soon as it came out, but ultimately I was very disappointed in it. The next book that makes this list is Convenience Store Women by, oh crap, I don't have the author's names in front of me right now, so I'm sorry, I'm not gonna list the author's name. It's like Sayuka, I'm gonna look up the author's name. The next book that makes this list is Convenience Store Women by Sayaka Murata. This book follows our main character, whose name I also do not remember, so I don't know why I'm still saying that. But she works at a convenience store. She's like a fully grown woman. All she wants to do is work at this convenience store. It gives her a sense of purpose, and unlike anywhere else, she can understand the social interactions needed in the store. And although she's very happy with her life, everyone close to her is pressuring her to date, have a husband, have a life outside of the store. This one, it's hard to say because I've heard so much about this author. This book was really hyped up for me, and then it was just okay. I do want to make it clear that the books on this list are not the worst books I've read this year by far. They just happen to be disappointing to me for some reason. So this one, again, was disappointing because it was so hyped up, and then I read it and it was just okay. I liked it, but I didn't think it was anything revolutionary. I didn't even keep it. I unhauled it a while ago. The next book on this list is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Mal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. This book follows our two main characters, Red and Blue, who are both on opposite times of the Time War that's been occurring since the dawn of civilization, or at least so it seems. You don't really get a lot of answers in this book. It kind of just throws you headfirst into it and you have to adapt as you go. But essentially they're on opposite sides of this war, and then they begin to write letters to each other and leaving them in places where they know the other person is going to find them, and slowly they fall in love. This is also a sapphic romance, which gains at some points. But at the end of the day, I just could not get into this book. And it was so hyped up. It had that Twitter moment, if any of you remember. Someone recommended it on Twitter and it went viral, and all of a sudden everyone started buying it. And though I had heard of this book before, that is ultimately what made me buy it. But then I just couldn't get into it. I think because there was nothing really to ground the story. Again, this is another one that just felt like a fever dream. I think I just needed some more substance. Next, we have The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This book follows the story of a woman who is married and one day decides to become a vegetarian. I think it's more like a vegan because I don't think she eats like eggs or cheese either. This like makes her husband go insane though, and her family. And they start to try to control her. She ends up in a mental institution. It's this whole big thing. I don't know why I keep saying that. I was absolutely convinced that this was gonna be like one of my favorite books of all time. I don't know why, because I'd never read anything about this author before. I hadn't even heard much about this book, but I was so convinced I was going to love it. And then I didn't. And it was so sad. It's not that I hated it. Again, I think I gave it 3 stars, but it just wasn't what I was expecting at the end of the day. Next, we have Wayward by Amelia Hart. This book follows the story of 3 women who are in the same family. One of the women is living in 2019 where she's escaping from an abusive relationship. Another woman is living in the 1940s where she's living on this grand estate and she's trying to figure out the truth about her mother who she's never known. And the other character takes place in the 1600s where she's being put on trial for being a witch. And all these women have like this affinity with nature that's almost like a magic power, but like isn't, but also kind of is. I hope you can't hear that in the distance. I'm sure you can. And I'm going to be thinking about it when I'm editing this. I'm sorry. It's out of my control. This book I read for the video I made about Goodreads finalists, and it just did not hit. It won both Best Debut Novel and Best Historical Fiction, and I was really excited because I haven't read a lot of historical fiction, but I do tend to love it. But then I just couldn't really get into it. I felt like it could have been set during any time period. Like, I didn't really feel like the historical setting mattered all that much. And there are just so many trigger warnings in this book for very little payoff. Like, I just didn't enjoy this book, is what I'm trying to say. And it was so hyped up for me because it had won those Goodreads Choice Finalist awards, but ultimately was not for me. This next book I will take any excuse to mention, and that is I Love Dick by Chris Kraus. I love this title so much. This book follows our main character. I think it's like semi-autobiographical. Oh, that's not how you say that word. Semi-autobiographical. You know the word I'm trying to say. I'm just gonna give up. I can't say it, no matter how hard I try. But it essentially follows our main character, Chris, who is married, but falls in love with this man named Dick, and then starts writing all these letters about how much she loves him, and she gets her husband on it. Her husband's writing this man letters, and they're sending these letters to him, and he's like, you guys are crazy. And that's essentially what this book is. I've been wanting to read this book for years, ever since I saw a picture of it on Tumblr in like 2016 or something like that. And the name just drew me in. So when I saw it in San Francisco, I had to buy it. Ultimately though, this book was pretty boring and just weird, but not necessarily weird in a good way. Weird in a very like off-putting, why are you doing this kind of a way, which makes it even weirder that this is based off of like her real life. It's like maybe toned down the obsession a little bit. So ultimately found it disappointing, but I will be forever keeping this one on my shelves just for the name. Next book on the list is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. This is another Year of the Sanderson book. This one isn't as big of a disappointment to me as Yumi, but it still is. This book is about our main character who gets stuck in medieval England, or like a version of it, and he has no memory. All he has is these pages of these books that are telling him how to survive in this world. That's a bad description, but I think you get the gist. This book is very, very humorous. I think the humor worked better in this one than in Yumi, but ultimately it's still not what I wanted out of the Year of the Sanderson, and I am kind of disappointed in it. After that, we have Kim Jae-young, born 1982, by Chonam Jo. This book is a commentary on what women face in modern day society, all the sexism, and it basically takes all the sexism of a South Korean society, because that's where the book takes place, and focuses it all on this one woman, and her story is supposed to be like the epitome of sexism in South Korean society. I can't tell you a thing about this book. Other than that description I gave, I don't remember this book at all. all, which is so sad because I was so excited about it, but it was just very bland and very forgettable at the end of the day, which is very disappointing. And the last book I'm going to be talking about today is Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. This book follows our main character Coraine, who one day has an assassin knock at her door and tell her that she is the key to saving the world because she's the last of a line of ancient lineage. It's a whole thing. I really want to like this one because despite how unoriginal and like YA it is, I do love Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, or at least I used to. So I was really excited for her new series, but I just thought it was boring and forgettable and nothing about it really drew me in, and it was also such a long book. So I definitely will not be continuing with the series. I am very disappointed about that. So there you go, those are my most disappointing reads of 2023. Let me know what your most disappointing reads were down below, and I'll see you soon with another video. Goodbye!